Hello, I'm Rabbi Peretz Wolf-Prusan. I'm very happy that Rabbi Russell invited me into your home for Congregation Beth Sholom's Take Home Torah. So I'm going to be sharing my screen. I have images I want to show you. It's all about Bereshit, and we'll get there in just a few moments. So this is the first image I want to share with you. The Torah has 11 very big letters. That's a hint that we're coming towards Bereshit. And 6 very small letters and 1 broken letter. This is, of course, a Sefer Torah, referring to a Torah scroll. 11 extra large, 6 very small, and 1 broken. The 2 extra large that I'm sure you're familiar with are in the Shema. Shin Mem Ayin, Shema, Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai, Echad. The simple explanation for why the scribes did this is that if you're moving your finger, no, don't touching, but if you're taking a yad and you, by accident, cover up on the horizontal bar of a dalid, Aleph Chet Dalid, the part that overhangs to the right, that distinguishes a dalid from a resh, you might say erroneously, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Acher, which means, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is someone else. Worse, if you are listening to the words in your head and writing them down, you might spell out Shin Mem Aleph instead of Shin Mem Ayin, which would be Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Perhaps, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Or worse, perhaps, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is someone else. It's hard to hang your kippah on that. So the ayin and the dalid are made very large. You can't miss them. They also end up spelling a word, ayin, dalid, ed. Every time we see the Shema this way, we witness it. And we witness it being said. Now, I'm sure you want to know the broken letter. I've actually had occasion twice now in my career of rabbis calling me and saying, there's a broken letter in my Sefer Torah, we have to get it repaired. And I always say, tell me first, is it in Bamidbar? Is it in the book of Numbers, chapter 25, verse 12? They say, yes, it is. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. It's broken on purpose. This is in the story of Pinchas, or Phineas, who takes it upon himself to harm and kill someone in an act of zealotry. He is given a blessing by God. I hereby grant to him my covenant of peace. Many understand Briti Shalom as my covenant of friendship or fellowship. In any event, there is some ironic dissonance between Phineas's bloody act of retribution and the covenant of Sholom. This, by the way, is the commentary of Robert Alter. Between his descendants and God. This is not the only instance in which members of a priestly caste figure as militant, indeed military, champions of the Lord's exclusive cult. The tradition has a difficulty with zealotry, a bloody act of retribution, and a covenant of peace. And so the scribal tradition breaks it. The Talmud comments, from where do we derive that the service of a blemished priest is retroactively invalid? Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, as the verse states in regard to Pinchas or Phineas, I hereby grant to him my covenant of peace. which means he receives the covenant when he's whole, Sholom, but not when he is blemished and lacking a limb. In other words, he's blemished like a sacrificial animal, but in this case, he's blemished because he kills. The Gemara comments, Sholom is written rather than Shalem. But Rab Nachman says the letter Vav in the word Shalom is severed. Vav Kiti'ah. According to tradition, this letter is written with a break in it, and therefore the word can be read as though the Vav is missing. What's missing here is peace. That is in the Steinsaltz commentary to the Talmud. The small letter that you may also know is in Vayikra. Vayikra el Moshe V'Yedaber Le'emor. And God called to Moses, saying, little tiny aleph. There's a wonderful tradition that it's a small aleph deriving from a small place, becoming great in journey above. In the Zohar Prisker edition, we find, why is the aleph of the word Vayikra traditionally written smaller than the other letters of the Sefer Torah? In order to show that although God called to Moses, Moshe, and although God showed Moshe tremendous respect by constantly speaking to him, even so, Moshe constantly lessened himself before God and before the Jewish people, Bnei Israel. Lower yourself until you are requested to rise to your proper status, rather than rising before you are called, lest you be told to lower yourself. We find that Moshe at the Ohel Moed stood at the side until God said to him, why do you continue to lower yourself? It's your turn to rise now. So according to this midrash, which is what the Zohar is commenting on, that Moses lessened himself, the reason God had to call Moshe was that Moshe humbly waited to be called before entering the Ohel Moed. It is therefore appropriate for the Torah to hint at Moshe's unrelenting modesty through one of the letters of the word Vayikra. God called. That's the Raza de Meir. And that's why there's a small aleph in Vayikra. Moshe was humble, held back until he was called forward. These are just really beautiful examples of the art of the Sefer Torah. Cannot be illuminated with flowers or illustrations, but the scribal tradition can play with the letters. As long as they can be read, they have meaning even as they're altered, large or small. So speaking of large, I'm going to take you into this is my study. Now we're going to go into my shed, into my studio, and I'm going to share with you the big bet of Bereshit. If you've ever seen a Torah scroll up close, the first letter is a bet, and it is larger than the following letters of Bereshit. Beit, Resh, Aleph, Shin, Yud, Tav. The problem is, as elucidated by Rashi, Bereshit, right here, this is like Simchat Torah, or Kabbalat Shabbat, or Hanukkah Habayit. What needs to follow here, this is in the beginnings of, what needs to follow is a noun. Except in the Torah, what follows is a verb, bara. It's hard to translate. In the beginnings of, he created. However, there is a tradition that says we're reading this a little wrong. It's really chapter 2. Resh, Aleph, Shin, Yud, Tav. Chapter 2, Reshit, the beginnings of. Then you might ask, where is chapter 1? Well, chapter 1 is right over here. I'll write it out for you. Chapter 1. Aleph. Oh, I didn't mention. Chapter 1 is white ink written on white. We can't read it. It is the world before this world, the material world. This is the infinite, immaterial world. White ink on white paper, or white cloth. This is the world of the infinite. And we live on this side, the world of the finite. One more understanding is that the Beth is closed on this side, as if to say, we now focus here, that direction. Don't spend too much time looking to what you cannot see. Spend a lot of time in Torah. Spend less time wondering what's not Torah. Shabbat Shalom. There's a little joke that a man comes to God and says, "Dear God, what is to you a million years?" A million years. And God says, "But a minute." And the man says, "Okay, what is to you $1 million?" And God says, "But a penny." And the man says, "Will you lend me a penny?" And God says, "Yes, in a minute." Shabbat Shalom. Remember to stay on the left side of the bet, heading towards justice and Torah.